Hi, Adrianus. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Excellent. Well, look, I always like to start off with a simple question. Just why did you get into law? And if you could just introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name is Adrianus Schoorl. I'm a lawyer. I probably knew from a very early age that it was either going to be law or car mechanics.
Yeah.
And we just discussed before we started recording
Yes,
why it was a
absolutely.
much better idea for me to stick to law. I think it is this quest for precision and understanding how human relationships are managed and coached and what sort of drives us when we barter and negotiate. So I always felt that the law was quite appealing to me. So I came to the law when I was quite young. I graduated from law school at age 21 and became a lawyer, full stop.
Nice.
It sounds really boring, but I've done lots of other stuff since, and I'm sure we get onto that.
Yeah, absolutely. So qualified, or sorry, graduated when you were 21.
Yeah. So in Holland, the system is a little different. In our case, what it really means is that you have to have read law
Yeah,
and you have to have a master's degree in law before you're able to become a lawyer.
yeah,
So in my case, what I would tell people, just for them to understand my sort of academic background, is that I went to law school. I know that you probably would call it very differently, and
yeah,
we always think it's very funny that a person in the UK becoming a solicitor could happily have a degree in biology or
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
engineering, and then decides later on, oh, you know what, I'm going to be a lawyer, which is great because it makes for a far more diverse audience, I guess.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
However, in Holland, not so, especially not back in the day. No, sir.
yeah. So when you do the bachelor's and the master's or the law school, whatever you want to call it, do you have to pass an exam like the US, or is it work experience, like qualified work experience?
No. So what happens after you graduate from university with a master's degree in law is that you then have to spend another, in my days, it was 3 years of a training contract.
Yeah,
So it's very similar to what you have as a training contract. In our case, what it does mean is that you can act as a lawyer, but it is on the basis of you being subject to supervision and, of course, training requirements.
yeah,
So when I was 21, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe just 22, little over 22, I started working as a lawyer at a fantastic law firm. And I spent the next 3 years in training. And I think, just a way for you to get acquainted with the different areas of the law. And the funny thing is that I chose what we then called banking and securities law.
right.
We now just call it fintech or financial services.
Yeah,
But back in the day, it was banking and securities law.
yeah,
It sounds really good in Dutch. You
yeah.
want me to say it?
What is it in Dutch?
Bank- en effectenrecht.
Right. Yeah, I think it probably sounds better in Dutch.
Yeah, it does. It does. Many things do, perhaps. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
So what were the early days like then? So life as a trainee in Amsterdam, I'm assuming. What
Yes, I'm
was,
talking about the early 2000s,
yeah,
the very early 2000s. Like literally, I remember writing a memorandum about the millennium bug
yes,
and how it was going to bring the economy to a grinding halt. And of course, it didn't.
yeah,
And at the time, we also realized it's probably not going to have that sort of impact. But we still did the research for it, and it was good fun.
yeah,
But what was it like? Well, there was no real internet. Well, there was internet, but internet had just been invented as a commodity for general use maybe 4 or 5 years prior to that.
yeah,
So this whole idea that you spend your days with, I don't know, AI, as we now have access to AI. Back in the day, I still remember an incident where I had to get the librarian to please print a website after I had given him the web address, which started with www. So that was a novelty. So I
yeah,
think we've come a long way. And it was the day of, fax machines and
yes, yeah, yeah,
negotiating agreements by sending each other very long faxes.
yeah. It's funny you mentioned fax machines because I spoke to a managing partner at a US law firm, and we're talking about there's no stupid questions, so encouraging juniors to ask the right questions. And he said that the technology's come full circle where he saw a trainee stood next to a fax machine trying to figure out how to use it,
Yeah.
and he had to he had to help them and train them use a fax machine. So I think that was quite a funny moment for him.
Yeah. And I think probably, I mean, I guess, and I think each generation says this, but it genuinely did feel like the pace of life was slower.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
you had to literally wait for a turn of a document. You couldn't just send a few emails on the back of the one you had just sent with the attachment.
yeah.
So I think, I don't know, the pace of negotiations of life perhaps has picked up dramatically.
Yeah. So if the pace of work is different, I guess you can get more done in your day. So what kind of work were you doing back when you were training?
Research, because when I was training at the time, Research, I think, primarily. Also the occasional client meeting, and I've done a fair amount of litigation. And litigation was, preparing your case and literally going to see your client in person by getting in the car,
Yeah.
driving to the client and discussing the plea, and then perhaps also afterwards discussing the outcome. Like I said, what do you mean Zoom? No Zoom, no Teams, no Google Meet,
Yeah.
nothing like that.
Yeah, well, I guess it's a lot less competitive to build good relationships. If everybody wants to use Zoom and you're the guy that goes in person, then maybe it's easier to build relationships that way.
Yeah, but I guess back in the day, it didn't really occur to you. I mean,
Yeah.
I still remember that there was this service that you could request a conference call. So you had to literally send someone to please get a code and you would circulate the code. That was a few years later again, but that was the way to dial in. Have you gotten the conference call code?
Yeah.
And you'd have a little pass in your wallet, and in it you'd have all these different numbers for all these different countries from where you could dial in.
Yeah.
I guess looking back at it, it's a little bit like there's a stack of records next to me.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, one of those blasts from the past, but you wouldn't know any better.
Yeah. Well, definitely come a long way in terms of the tech side of things. So, did your training in the Netherlands? What kind of law firm was it? An international global law firm?
Yep.
Was it local? Like, where were you?
I think it was the beginning of big international law firms
Yeah.
finding their way to continental Europe. I think it was literally just at the beginning. So at the time, we were all sort of first movers. So nobody at the time had ever heard of a Linklaters or a Clifford Chance, et cetera, et cetera. It was just fairly new to us. So the firm that I was at became part of CMS
Right.
Cameron McKenna. You will
Yeah.
know Cameron McKenna in
Yeah.
the UK. I even spent some time with Cameron McKenna here in London. The great irony is that the firm that I'm with now, which is DLA Piper, is literally in the same building as where I, at the time, and I was even articling at the time, spent a few months as literally a baby lawyer,
Yeah.
which is good fun. Speaking of full circle,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's quite a rewarding experience.
Yeah.
The interior of the building is nothing like what it was back in the day, but it was, I guess, the beginning of us understanding big law. And I think at the time, the point of reference still was that law firms were mostly domestic.
Yeah.
So you'd work for a Dutch law firm, or if you were in Italy, for an Italian law firm. And there might be the occasional international lawyer coming from an international financial center, like London at the time, still is, of course, phoning you up and needing, your sort of local input and expertise.
Yeah.
And then you, as that Dutch qualified lawyer, would give him answers.
Yeah.
I think we've come a very long way from then. I think we now understand that a law firm is this international concept, an international brand name, an international identity with colleagues literally all over the globe. And to us, it doesn't matter that much anymore where your colleagues are based, because ultimately you're literally one global team.
Yeah.
But that logic back in the day, no, that was a completely new concept for us.
Where do you think that comes from? Is that client led? Is that clients being more global, or what do you think has driven that change?
I think perhaps, I don't know, globalization or the global economy, the fact that,
Yeah.
borders have opened up tremendously. Don't forget, up until 1992, there was no real European Union. The Maastricht Treaty was 92. And we're talking about 7, 8 years after that, right? So the idea of the euro, for instance, I was there when the euro was introduced. It was in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And we were all complaining that the price of a loaf of bread had just doubled. And if you look back at the day and compare prices, then clearly what were we complaining about? But still, the idea of one global currency, right? So this idea of global markets or securities markets. I became a regulator and we started looking at the consolidation of stock exchanges. So one of the things when I did banking and securities law is that I was always drawn to being a regulator at some point.
Yeah.
And I did. And what I did at the time was supervision over Euronext. And that was the era, so the mid-2000s of stock exchange consolidation. So this idea that it isn't just a domestic market, but I think that was also a metaphor for many other markets that aren't just domestic.
Yeah.
We sort of evolved with it. But look, I don't know. You're welcome to say that I don't look it, but we're talking about something that happened 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It just doesn't always feel like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's my story. It's my history. It's
Yeah.
literally my evolution as a lawyer.
So I'm not hugely familiar with it. Is Euronext like a Nasdaq, but for the whole of Europe?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's become bigger than that. Yeah. Well, it's a stock market. So my area of expertise and focus has always been financial markets.
yeah,
And then I focus on both the financial markets, and then you're looking at products like capital raising, typically, and also investing.
yeah,
It's the bridge between those that seek capital and those that wish to invest capital. And of course, there's an entire army of intermediaries that live in and around that sort of conversion between investors and investees. And I'm coming up with a very academic example, a very academic description, but what it really means is the stockbrokers, the stock exchanges, the banks, the placement agents, and it sort of evolved from there again. But that was like the playing field at the time, and I thought, okay, well, what better experience for me than to be at the heart of it, which is why I opted to be a stock exchange
yeah,
regulator. And that is typically my segue into Dubai, and I'm sure you'll
yeah.
come onto it.
I mean, I was just about to ask you if you're early to mid 2000s, you moved to Dubai. Is that right?
Yeah, I did.
So what was the big? Because Dubai now has got a lot of press about being somewhere that expats are going en masse. Whereas I don't think, and you know better than I do, but I don't think mid 2000s it was a massive haven for professionals to go and work out there. I mean, what was it like? What was the firstly, what was your impression about the place before you moved out there? And how was the reality of moving at that time?
I was drawn to this notion of a life less ordinary,
Yeah,
um, and also just think here you are given a clean slate to build a financial center from scratch. So with all the prior knowledge, and this was 2005. So with all our prior sort of understanding of what financial markets are, and with all its obstacles and issues, and the European Union has complexities, and I mean it has come up with a great number of fantastic legislative initiatives. But you're given an opportunity to create something in sort of a greenfield way where you can help build a financial center. I mean, I just thought that it was a fantastic challenge, and it's one that paid off tremendously well.
yeah,
Because I think one of the main things that I think Dubai has become famous for is that it has firstly started looking at international best practice when looking at financial services. But now we're at this place where we're defining it, right? We're setting
yeah,
the agenda. We've taken a sort of pole position on, for instance, things like AI. And so I think at the time there was this, overwhelming sense of promise,
yeah,
of opportunity, of not being constrained by legacy, but rather looking at what works well and keeping that and building on that. So that was the appeal to me professionally. Personally, it was also just excitement. I mean, who wouldn't like the opportunity of trying a completely different life in a place where all these different cultures live side by side, harmoniously? And it was also the beginning of the massive sort of influx of big international investment firms.
yeah.
And I wanted to be part of that.
So when you first moved out there, what were some of the expat institutions that were there? And more on the social side of things. So now there's beach bars everywhere. There are very competitive for places to go. Whereas I think from people I've spoken to back in the early 2000s, there was one or two very famous beach bars that everybody went to. That was like the number one place to.
I think you want to talk about Barasti.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Well, I was in my late 20s.
yeah,
I moved there with a wife and child. I don't know. I mean, I was never really drawn to that aspect of the lifestyle.
yeah,
And yes, of course, it is also there. Dubai is a very glamorous place. I think back in the day, it wasn't nearly as glamorous as it is
yeah,
now. But sure, there were these sort of the favorite hangouts. I remember with our colleagues after work, we went into Emirates Towers to go something with Ivy. I think it was called The Ivy, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken. And that was our sort of favorite hangout after work. And because there weren't that many places, you would all sort of meet. But then
yeah,
Dubai was a lot smaller than it is now. I think now it's truly metropolitan.
yeah, yeah.
Back in the day, it had the promise of becoming truly metropolitan.
Yeah. So I saw, did you move to Riyadh or were you living in Dubai and then commuting to Riyadh?
I only started going to Riyadh in the, so that's 2011, 2012. And I've lived in Riyadh in between 2021 and 2020, 21, 22.
Right.
So I took another 10 years to then actually make the move there and live there. And Riyadh's always been fascinating to me.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
ever since I don't know if you've ever saw a documentary by Michael Palin, Around the World in 80 Days, heavily inspired by Phileas Fogg
Right.
and the Arts Club. But this challenge of Michael Palin, and this was I think an 86 or 87 documentary. And I'm a big fan of Michael Palin and his work.
Yeah, yeah.
But in any case, he did this maybe a romanticized version. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it was like in the Middle East in the 1980s because I wasn't there. But man, I saw that documentary and I figured I want to see that. I want to be
Yeah,
part of that. I want to, you know,
yeah,
because it just felt so exciting. This idea of being this bridgeway between East and West and like just all these different cultures. And I don't know, I was always drawn to it. So there's this episode where he travels through Saudi Arabia, and there was this mystique of going through Saudi Arabia, which wasn't that accessible at all. I mean, I guess at the time, getting a visa to be able to travel
yes, yeah,
to
yeah,
Saudi, that was not a given at all. I mean,
yeah,
so I think for that, it became this, I don't know, appealing place to go to.
yeah. Well, I've heard it. I've heard people talk about it in the sense that Dubai in the 1980s, 1990s wasn't as Western friendly as it is now, and people have described Saudi Arabia as being slightly behind in that development, not in terms of economic or financial development, in terms of openness to the West. So, for example, they recently just opened hotels, so you can now drink alcohol in hotels. Sorry, in the embassy
Mm-hmm.
in Riyadh,
Mm-hmm.
which is a cultural shift moving more towards maybe what Dubai is now. I mean, did you get the impression that it was closed off? Like, what was your impression when you lived out there in Riyadh?
That I guess it was pockets. Um, First of all, I've very fond memories of having lived in Riyadh.
Yeah,
And not only because at the time we lived in this fantastic compound with mostly expats, I think also just the interaction. Maybe I'm not your typical expat, but I always appreciated the interaction with the very sort of. So I've had the privilege to work with very many very professional Saudi Arabian lawyers in
yeah,
a great number of institutions. And I think I always felt that I was very much appreciated for the skill set that I brought to the table.
yeah, yeah,
And this idea that you help build and realize a vision is intoxicating. It's fantastic. I wasn't always one for going to parties. I mean, yes, I've been to the embassy parties and I guess it's good fun, but that to me did not define my experience. But I think you're right. I mean, Dubai's always had this appeal of probably being more um, liberal. But then again, that never really defined the Dubai experience
yeah.
to me, per se.
So what does from your perspective, what does define that experience for you?
First of all, it became home. So Dubai allowed me to grow into the professional that I've become today. So it became home. I've bought a house in Dubai. I've been able to live there very peacefully with my family. Um, and this professional satisfaction of being part of unprecedented, unrivaled growth. It just never seems to stop
Yeah,
growing. There's that. And this seriousness that we also bring to the table, right? Because people do need to live and work there. I mean, I guess for some it might sound like work hard, play hard, and I think that's also true. But I think the emphasis is also on taking pride in the fact that we're all, I don't know, in a way, I'm speaking for myself perhaps, but contributing.
yeah,
And I like that. On top of that, it is a very comfortable lifestyle. I probably don't make the most of it anymore, but we live next to the beach, to the ocean. There's plenty access to leisure facilities, like there's a pool nearby, and also in my compound, we're just finishing the pool, and I think all of that is great. And I think if you wanted to compare and contrast purely on lifestyle, I think Dubai will probably win hands down in comparison to most European countries.
yes, 100%.
Um, but do I sound really boring when I say, well, maybe that was relevant to me 20 years ago, perhaps. Like there was a time that people all went for Friday brunches. So we changed the weekend a few years ago. The
Yeah.
weekend used to be Friday, Saturday, and it became Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
But it was this big cultural phenomenon of mostly expats going on their Friday brunches. And I probably did that too, but then that sort of loses its appeal because then,
Yes.
we have a house now, so let's spend some time with the family or
Yeah.
let's invite some friends over. I don't know. It's like if I'm asking any other person to describe what has become home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And of course I appreciate it. I embrace it. I live it. It's part of me.
Yeah.
It's going to be very difficult for me to then at some point decide, oh, let's go live somewhere else. No, because Dubai has, I don't know, has a piece of me.
Yeah, and it's very, so I lived there for a comparatively short period of time, but when I moved out there, it was very easy to buy into the lifestyle. Everybody worked really hard. It wasn't like being in the Cayman Islands where maybe it feels a bit more like island time.
Yeah,
On the surface, it may look like a tourist destination, but it has a massive financial services
yeah,
industry
absolutely.
that's world regarded, and we'll come on to it later, but particularly in crypto, following the US 3 or 4 years ago, whatever it is, having a bit of an issue with security, defining a security or whatever they're dealing with. So yeah, there's definitely something for everyone at all stages of life. It's not just a party place for 21-year-olds. It's also somewhere you can raise a family and have a career as well, which I think makes it pretty unique for a tax haven. But most tax havens don't have everything. Maybe they have one or two things, but not everything.
No, but I like the sort of playfulness. Like, have you ever seen a police force driving around in a Lamborghini Aventador?
Yeah,
And I know it's for PR because
yeah,
I think it's not a very practical car if you're ever in a hot pursuit and you have to go into the desert. And I truly believe that the Land Cruiser will be a lot more practical.
yeah,
But still, I like that Dubai doesn't hide that it likes to showcase success.
yeah, yeah,
Success, I think, can be celebrated together. I don't know if you've ever seen that. I'm sure you have, but Top Gear, there was this
yeah,
one episode when they basically just blocked the road and they did this race between a Nissan Patrol. And it's a cultural thing. And if you know what Liwa is, for us, Liwa is the end of year. It is December. People go to Liwa and then we race up the mountain.
yeah,
And that's just amazing to see. So you have these cars that have 1,000, maybe 2,000 horsepower. Health and safety warning. I am a petrol head.
yeah,
Even though I also appreciate battery power, I've learned to embrace that too.
yeah,
But I don't know. There is a glamour. There is a glamour that comes with that.
yeah,
But it is a glamour with, I think, also the message that it's okay to celebrate success because it's hard earned. It's many people coming together, all striving to make, I don't know, Dubai a better place tomorrow than it is today.
yeah,
That work ethic I do pick up on. And I think it's also reflected in the way, I don't know, bigger programs are being rolled out, right? Like the emphasis on, like you mentioned, crypto. Dubai managed to put itself on the map in relation to virtual assets.
yeah,
So that was a conscious policy driver, but also financial services and still wealth management, another one. I'm not talking about areas in
yeah,
my chosen profession, which is financial services. It's always reaching a little higher, striving a little sort of beyond.
yeah.
And I love that. I can't help it.
Yeah.
It's addictive.
Yeah, I said it was when I was out there. It was very easy to buy into that vision. So beyond the lifestyle side of things, then, what are the differences between client personalities? So when I interacted with locals, as in Emiratis or Saudis, they're the nicest people. Gave you loads of time, very easy to work with. In a professional sense, firstly, who are your clients? Are they locals? And what are the differences in personalities and client expectations between Europe and the Middle East?
I think there's been cross-pollination. I don't think that we can say that there is one particular client type because I see, like whenever we deal with, for instance, a private wealth office of a high net worth individual, for instance, you'll typically come across Western as well as Arab lawyers. So I think it's become more of a mix. I think we appreciate quality of service, so demands are very high. My clients tend to be the financial institutions, payment service providers, but also regulators. I'm just picking up on an enormous amount of professionalism.
Yeah.
And maybe 20 years ago, that bifurcation might have been very different. I'm not sure. But I think by and large, it's just become, I think the regulator will probably have played a role in that as well, right? I mean, the bar is raised high for each one of my clients because I think the big common denominator for my clients is that by and large they're regulated.
Yeah.
But expectations do not discriminate between a business of any background or any origin.
Yeah.
So the regulator, I think, in a way sets the pace. And I think that has helped many of my clients reach a level of sophistication that I think is probably quite unusual when comparing to perhaps peer groups in other places in the world, right? I mean, we tend to take regulation very seriously. It's also my fault because I drafted a fair amount of it.
Yeah.
but I think that does help.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's an answer to your question, but
Yeah. So the big attraction of moving out there was, as you said, it's a bit of a blank canvas. You could be a part of the vision towards building that regulatory environment. I mean, when you moved out there, I'm assuming there was some regulation, but not as mature. How has it changed in the UAE and just the Middle East in general in terms of how mature the regulation is?
The first time that I looked at and have actually heard of a comprehensive crypto regulatory framework was when I met with the Abu Dhabi Global Market in 2018. And I went there with a client and we looked at and the regime changed since, but it was the first time that the regulator, in a very mature way, defined what crypto assets were and how they were meant to be regulated.
Yeah.
That was well before MiCA in Europe. So what has changed, and I think that's the big sea change, is that we're not looking at importing international best practice, we're reshaping it in a way. Like, how many standalone virtual assets regulators do you know? I know of one, which happens to be the one in Dubai, which is doing a great job in attracting leading institutions. And I think the very forward way in which we deal with things like, I don't know, payment tokens and how we use payment tokens, stablecoin that is.
Yeah.
And also, if you look at the traction that we're now generating on the wealth management side, I think we're sort of rethinking a little bit what a financial center is. And again, another point is there was not really a defined or understood concept of what a financial center is until we started building the DIFC.
Yeah.
And now we see multiple, and we see other countries and other jurisdictions across the globe following suit because it does work, this idea of clustering. Now, if I was British, I would probably say, City of London.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's exactly what I mean. This idea that you look at what works well and keep building on it, not held back by legacy. Right? I mean, one of the things is that we've opted for English law.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a fantastic reason if I was an English qualified solicitor to start looking at furthering my career in the Middle East, because English law, I think, is here to stay.
Yeah.
I think it is a law that governs the relationships between financial institutions. And I think we've recognized that in the Abu Dhabi Global Market and also in the Dubai International Financial Center prior to that. Because the whole point is you want to instill a sense of confidence, right? So that things don't just change. And the fundamental proposition is the law that we've developed over hundreds of years is the law that applies in the financial center, where law matters perhaps even more so than in a purely, I don't know, a legal regime that also regulates the conduct of private individuals. So it's that sense of evaluating, polishing, shaving, building, and making wise decisions as we go along.
Yeah.
Now I've supported and I've been involved in plenty sort of rules changes, and every single time it was also in response to having identified what we can do better next time. Good example, we're building this funds regime. Like we, the collective, we, the professionals, are all working on, in the ecosystem of a funds regulatory framework. So what we see is that we look at removing regulatory burden where we can, but making sure that there is a robust oversight framework where it is necessary. And I think the underlying principle is always ask yourself what promotes confidence in the most effective way and still promotes a level playing field where we're able to attract and retain top talent and top financial institutions.
Yeah, I guess as a growing financial center, you always have to be conscious about reputation,
Yeah.
keeping people in the region, attracting new businesses. So, for example, London, New York, very well established markets. Even if there was a crisis, those markets would still continue as they always have. But I think by the sounds of what you just said, those smaller emerging markets can be a bit more nimble and innovative in terms of their regulatory environment to, number one, attract new companies to the region, but also to maintain them there as well. So, I mean, I'm just thinking about comparing your experience in Europe towards the Middle East. How is it different in that respect?
What I liked is that, and maybe to put it in very simple terms, when I was growing up as a lawyer, I told you that most of my work was doing research.
Yes.
And I do feel that perhaps in a place in the Middle East, your ability to generate exposure to clients is probably greater, although that might have been true for my generation of newcomers to the region, because I do feel that, and just looking at the sheer volumes, right? So that's just happened.
Yeah.
Now, how did that happen? By this demonstration of, I don't know, being able to adapt and evolve undeterred by legacy, but of course, always keeping in the back of your mind what works well and what does a financial center need. So there's that. I also see that deal sizes has changed dramatically. I think we're looking at very large transactions, and I don't feel that necessarily there is a difference at all in the quality of workload between, let's call it, your average associate in perhaps London or the Middle East.
Yeah.
But yeah, that might have changed over the years, right? I mean, there's been, and I do acknowledge there's been a growth trajectory, obviously.
So in terms of your own sector then, I know we've touched on parts of it, but in one sentence, what is your practice area and what clients do you service?
My practice area is financial services exclusively. My clients tend to be banks, so financial institutions, the regulators. We work a fair amount with regulators, so we help with sponsoring or them sponsoring rules changes. I do funds work, so I help sponsors raise capital and convert that into an investment product. We do a lot of work with virtual assets.
Yeah.
So that means those investing in crypto assets, crypto asset trading platforms, and so on.
What developments are going on in your market right now that are interesting?
I think the big development is the adoption of, for instance, or stablecoin. I think is a great example. It means that we're no longer looking at money or fiat currency as the only mechanism to give effect to transactions. I think that's a shift. I also see a development in different ways of investing. So there was a time that a funds lawyer was like an understood commodity. When you were a funds lawyer, you would set up funds, but there are now all these different new ways of seeking co-investment, and that is typically with the use of technology, like, I don't know, crowdfunding is one example, and that's been around for a while, but tokenization is a whole another. So we see a lot of initiatives around tokenization. So these are, I think, initiatives that try and achieve the same thing, but probably in more efficient ways, or we're exploring more efficient ways of reaching the same result. Payments regulation is fairly new. I think most Gulf states now have, most Middle Eastern countries now have their own payments regulatory framework. That payments regulatory framework is maturing rapidly.
Yeah.
We see an influx of international payments institutions. Like you will have seen the announcements of Revolut is one example. Yeah.
Yeah, that was very recent, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Only a couple of months ago.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned there more on the adoption side of stablecoins. I remember um, seeing a very famous investment banking CEO 3 years ago saying, "Crypto is for mugs. Don't go anywhere near it. Our Wall Street bank will never entertain crypto." And then the clip fast forwards to today, and he's fully adopted crypto within the bank. So it now has the first steps towards Wall Street adoption beyond just consumer use.
Absolutely. And we see that with our financial institutions clients. So we work with banks that are looking to create new services in relation to virtual assets. And you're right, I think 10 years ago, that would have been, well, I wouldn't say unthinkable, but it probably would be a little bit more. And I think there was a time when we all thought, okay, well, no, it's a peripheral thing and it could
Yeah,
be for interbank settlements. No, I think it's become an asset class in its own right.
yeah. Especially with on the clearing side of things, I think clearing and settlement is an area that's doing well, or an area it's been widely adopted in and saves money in. Um, Something you mentioned earlier as well that I've seen some examples of, but I won't pretend to understand the intricacies of it, is essentially crowdfunding, as you mentioned, using blockchain with real estate assets.
Yep.
Um, what are the benefits? What are the benefits to doing that? Guarantees.
I think it is largely because you're able to unlock much more value for a far greater pool of people. Rather than you having to buy into a fund,
Yeah,
meaning you have exposure to buildings, plural,
yeah,
I think it is much more localized. So you're able to say with a greater amount of precision that I would like to have exposure to that specific apartment with ocean view from the third or the fourth floor.
yeah,
Not the top floor, because I think that's too much of a risk to
yeah,
take, etc., etc. So I think it is much more focused asset allocation. I think it's also the ability to create smaller ticket sizes and the ability to use technology and smart contracts. Now, of course, a question for us lawyers, enforceability of smart contracts. So that's typically when you need to get the lawyers involved,
yeah,
and how do you make sure that the token that you have actually reflects the underlying value. And I think that's sort of the intersect between technology, regulation, finance, and a lot of work is being done right now. But I think tokenization, I wouldn't go as far as saying it's going to solve all our problems, right? Because there was a time that we all felt that investment funds were perfectly fine, and they still are.
yeah,
They still play, and they will continue to play, in my view, an extremely important role. But we're now used to directing and pinpointing exactly how we wish to invest and where we wish to invest. And we also used, I think, to having more access to liquidity.
yeah,
So liquidity is, I think, another very important sort of byproduct of something being available on the blockchain, which is not bound by trading hours. And the markets might be closed, or the markets might have their weekends. No, because the blockchain doesn't sleep.
yeah,
I'm giving you a couple of examples. And of course, there are plenty of regulatory questions that you then need to answer on the back of that, which is, well, what about market surveillance? What about insider dealing? And all of these things are things that preoccupy the minds of lawyers and regulators and, of course, other practitioners like the financial institutions. How do we do this in a very responsible way? But I think those discussions we're having now, right? So I do truly believe that it is creating an entirely new sort of market infrastructure, so that if we look back at this clip 10 years from now and we are sort
yeah,
of asking ourselves, well, it's like how we talked about fax machines, right? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah,
can you imagine if I had told you 20 years ago, if I told my 20 years ago self, I don't know, you're not going to put pieces of paper in some glorified printer or reverse printer that sucks it up and spits it out. We're going to actually now sign documents on a blockchain, which now we're doing, right? Smart contracts, or even just signing with a DocuSign. Nobody'd heard of that, right? So this idea of technology finding its way into everyday transactions, I think will only become more and more prevalent.
yeah. So I mean, you mentioned market surveillance there. Does crypto and blockchain or digital assets, is it a different challenge to figure out market surveillance? I mean, how does it work in practice? Is it so let's say for example over the past 10, 20, 30 years, lawyers and regulators have built up systems that properly monitor assets to make sure they're being used and liquidity is being distributed properly. Does the actual technology of blockchain, enforceability of smart contracts, is it a different challenge in nature, or is it some of the similar challenges that we've faced over the past 30 years that have influenced the original regulation?
I think by and large, it's about confidence. It is knowing that when you transact, you're not sidelined by those that might be more in the know that you will be,
Yeah,
or that have the ability to create a false and misleading impression of trading activity, which is the definition of market manipulation.
yeah,
I think conceptually it is the same, but the technology that underpins transactions changes. I think the whole point of blockchain is that it sort of moves us away from there being like a central point of clearing and settlement, even though I think by and large a lot of the models are still premised on there being an intermediary, on there being
yeah,
a clearinghouse. So I do think that this idea that it is a move towards disintermediation poses entirely new challenges, but conceptually it's still the same.
yeah,
You as a person trading on these markets need to have the reassurance that you are not overtaken left, right, and center by those that have access to information that you wouldn't have. So in other words, to sort of lift that market asymmetry,
yeah,
because that's the fundamental piece behind the regulation of market abuse. And of course, market manipulation. Now, market manipulation also requires that there is liquidity, right? Because what you don't want is that with a small asset class or a small pool of liquidity, a small movement in a particular asset would have a big impact. So what you're expecting, of course, is therefore requirements along the lines of liquidity. How do you get deep liquid markets that are able to absorb trading movements? I think there's a role for regulators, of course.
yeah.
But these are not new concepts.
Yeah, this is what I'm getting at. It's not new. It's not new at all, really. Same challenges. It's just a new asset class coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. But one of the things, and I'm very grateful that I was, and I'm fortunate enough to have been a regulator in multiple jurisdictions. But I mean, again, the operative word is always confidence. If people do not feel the confidence
Yeah,
that there is going to be like not a guaranteed fair outcome, but that there is a fair outcome,
yeah,
or the likelihood of a fair outcome, that is what we need for markets to function,
yeah,
right? So that is the role of a regulator. And I tend to think that that is a very important role because I truly believe, look, I'm biased. I have been a regulator. I do regulation, but the market needs that kind of oversight.
yeah. And I don't know what it is specifically about crypto and blockchain, but I feel like it's had a pretty tough start to life. I think a lot of the early news coming out of the crypto industry was, I wouldn't say negative, but there were some challenges around pump and dump schemes and as you mentioned, external shocks not having an effect on the market. So whereas now with Bitcoin, I think it's very difficult for one person to affect the overall price, whereas 10, 15 years ago, some guy in his mum's basement could put in a few trades.
Was it you?
Yeah, yeah. I am Satoshi.
You're Satoshi.
Yeah, yeah. So I say I think it's just a matter of maturity, really. But
I think that's right. I think markets are and have matured. And I think that is true for any new asset class, right? But then no asset class is impervious to external factors. I mean,
yeah,
surely real estate crises, I'm sure you've had them in the UK.
yeah, yeah,
And what were the factors exactly and how can we guard ourselves against it? Because there's so much riding on it, right? It's an entire economy that will be based on your ability to find or fund your property.
yeah,
The subprime mortgage debt, it really did happen, right? And we've seen property prices tank. Now you can go into a deep dive as to cause and effect, but by and large, it is all about restoring confidence. So I think what was the byproduct of all of that? Well, let's go regulate rating agencies so that when we know that when a rating agency says that this particular issuance, this securitization of an asset class that is taken off the balance sheet into an SPV is worth investing in, we've decided we have to invest in confidence
yeah,
again. And I feel that that's been the consistent response of regulators. And I'm not putting the blame now on rating agencies because that's not what happened. But I think that was one of the sort of, outcomes, which is again focus on confidence, focus on people having the assurance that somebody's watching.
Yeah.
Now, again, I don't know. I mean, I can completely understand that there are people that believe that it's a dichotomy to think that virtual assets can go without regulation or can go with must go with regulation, because it was supposed to be the sort of polar opposite, right?
Yeah.
It was supposed to be, but I don't believe that that is very likely to happen
Yeah.
because it's become too important an asset class.
I think there are some evangelists out there of when crypto first came out, where not anti-government sentiment, but very much disruptive. You know, this is for us, this is for the people.
Yeah, to democratize, yes.
Yeah,
And to disintermediate, yes. I understand, and I understand the pros and the cons, but I think by and large the response
Yeah.
has been everyone is better off when it is well and truly regulated.
Yeah.
Because in the long run, it just creates, I think, a much more sustainable market for all of us to transact in.
yeah,
And that, I think, is a fundamental contributor to, I don't know, stability and prosperity.
yeah.
I guess I sound really boring, like a broken record almost.
No, but I think it's one. I think it's one of those things of, you know, maybe being a regulator is a bit of a thankless task, because nobody appreciates what you do until something goes wrong.
Mhm.
And when it does go wrong, people start pointing the finger.
Oh, and there will always be crises.
Yeah,
It's a thing. It's a recurring thing. It's almost like a force in its own right. I mean,
yeah,
I'm not going to sit here and predict the next crisis because I wouldn't know.
yeah,
But it will happen. And we'll look back and say, well, thank goodness our response was X, Y, Z. Because now at least that crisis is not going to happen again. But at the end of the day, we're all human, right? And we are trying to make it work.
yeah,
And we're trying to, I don't know, because it's all about these interdependencies. Things have become so unbelievably interdependent that there is no such thing as, you know, an isolated single point of failure that has no ripple effect
yeah.
globally. I don't believe that.
Yeah, I think there's very few economies, except for maybe in the territory of a failed state, that aren't interdependent on other trading partners.
Yeah. And I don't believe that that's going to change anytime soon. So we better adopt consistent standards that we understand from each other.
Yeah,
And then one of the things that I ended up doing when I worked with regulators was to identify, you know, sort of global task forces. Like, good example, in money laundering, you're talking about the Financial Action Task Force.
yeah,
But in securities regulation, you're talking about the IOSCO, the International Organization of Securities Commissions.
yeah,
I mean, it's pretty dry reading material for some, but for me, it was just, how do you benchmark and how do you make sure that we meet standards that we've all collectively agreed will work? Because again, it is creating confidence also from external investors.
yeah. I seem to remember a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, on the subject of FATF. I think the UAE came off the grey list
Yeah.
a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So just on to DLA Piper as well. Yeah, I mean, tell me about DLA Piper. Like, what do they do in the region? Who are they? What are they good at? What areas are they growing in?
Okay, I can now plug DLA.
Yeah, yeah. Finally.
I think we're first of all we're a large international law firm.
Yeah.
With a very big offering, a sizable offering amongst our peers in the Middle East.
Yeah.
We are, I think, as close as it gets to full service. That means that we do different things, and we do different things very well. So I have a class-leading technology team, intellectual property team, employment team, corporate, finance, litigation, and in my case, regulatory. So we do many things, and we do many things very well. We are present in each of the GCC countries, with the exception of Kuwait. We capitalize on that presence in each of these key markets. In terms of how we deal with people, well, we strongly believe in empowerment.
Yeah.
Of course, we need to look at the next generation of lawyers, because I won't be around forever. I'll be 50 this year, just saying. But for us, the emphasis, of course, is therefore also on being an employer of choice, right? So I think that translates into our culture, and it isn't just because we want to keep attracting young talent or new talent. It is also because we truly believe in being an inclusive, empowering workplace where people can rely on us to help us further their careers themselves, to create that sort of framework for growth,
Yeah.
personal satisfaction.
So obviously you're from the Netherlands. What lawyers currently work at DLA in the GCC? Is it locals? Is it a mix of everyone who works there?
I think it is a very big international mix. I think in the earlier days, perhaps there was more sort of Anglo-Saxon representation,
Right.
but I see a great number of continental European lawyers. I probably was at some point one of few Dutch lawyers, but even that has changed
Yeah.
because I think we've all found our way to the Middle East. Now, I really
There
was
are
one of the
too
first.
many now.
Well, yes, too many lawyers, no such thing. No such thing. No. No, but I think the mix changed, and of
Yeah.
course we focus heavily on so Emiratization
Yeah.
is a big
Yeah,
driver
yeah.
also within law firms. Saudiization in Saudi Arabia, for instance, for us to make sure that we help create the next generation of top talent amongst Emirati lawyers as well,
Yeah.
which is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So you joined the region or moved to the region in mid 2000s, early 2000s. What makes a successful lawyer today? I mean, if somebody wants to move from, let's say, London, for example, to the Middle East, what kind of lawyers would you be looking for?
People that understand international law firms,
Yeah.
because we are very much part of the network, right? DLA Piper doesn't operate in isolation in the Middle East at all. We're very much part of that. So we talked about that in the very early part of our conversation. And I think DLA Piper is one of those big international law firms that does a great number of things very well. And it also means that you need to understand what it means to be working for an international law firm, because that's the culture. That's how we operate. And I think in terms of what it's like living in the Middle East, I came there out of probably, if you dig all the way down to the sort of bare essence of it, the sense of adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it still is a fantastic adventure if you come from London or Amsterdam or Berlin and you're looking for a big change of scenery, then Dubai will absolutely deliver. And I'm still very grateful, almost, well, I wouldn't say I wake up, grateful every day. No, but I often sort of remember what a fantastic choice it was and how different my life would have been had I not come, had I not allowed Dubai to shape my career the way it has.
Yeah.
So, be ready to say to yourself, because I was one of those people that I guess told himself, well, I'm going to live, because at the time I probably still called it abroad. I'm going to live abroad for 5 years and
Yeah.
then maybe move back. Yeah, but it's just that I never did. So be prepared to, at some point, wake up and realize that this is your new reality.
Yeah.
And I'm still grateful for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what else? Demands are high because the standards are high. I talked about the standard of regulation in Dubai, but I should also maybe just mention the fact that deal sizes are equivalent to and perhaps even exceeding sometimes those of deal sizes elsewhere. So it's not like you mentioned the Cayman Islands.
Yeah.
I don't know what life is like in the Caymans. I've never been. I do deal with Cayman Funds Council at time, but it is certainly not the sort of laid back tropical destination where you can have a few easy years. No, please don't. Please, if that's what you're expecting, then do not book the ticket.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but for all intents and purposes, it is just, I mean, I guess I don't always register anymore that we live in a land of superlatives as well, but yes, it is the world's biggest tower and it is the world's largest mall and the world's largest indoor skiing track, and it is the world's largest indoor aquarium. And, we have all these world largest, world first.
Yeah.
It is spectacular. I've gotten used to spectacular, I guess. But yeah, I guess if you like that, like I do,
Yeah.
then yeah, by all means,
Yeah,
come and
absolutely.
explore. Yeah.
We actually have the Sheffield Ski Centre, so
Tell us about the Sheffield Ski Centre.
it's pretty much the same as the one you get in the mall in Dubai, just very small, and it keeps burning down. But except for
Does it
that,
have a brush? Is it brushes or is it snow? Oh, it's
no,
not
no,
lit.
it's a carpet.
It's a carpet.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
see. Right.
I wouldn't recommend it.
That's lovely. So my wife thinks it's hilarious when I talk about Holland, and then I tell her, yeah, we have a mountain. And then she asks me, well, how high is that mountain? There's a few hundred meters,
Yeah.
because that's the one mountain that we have in Holland.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
St. Peter's mountain, and maybe somebody should look it up. But
Yeah. I'll have a look.
yeah, we have a mountain.
And also another, it's something I didn't make the most of when I was out there, but a lot of people talk about other places you can visit. So Oman, for example, is
Yeah, beautiful.
pretty nice. And there's some other places.
Even the drive to Oman. So I had a meeting in Ras Al Khaimah, which is
Al Hatan, is it the
yeah,
mountains?
it's the Hatta Fort Hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the typical border crossing.
Yeah.
So the drive is through the Al Hajar mountain range,
Right.
which is spectacular. It's breathtaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm ever fortunate enough to own a Porsche,
Yeah.
which I still don't, I would absolutely go for Saturday drives, because driving
Yeah.
through the Hajar mountain range is unbelievably beautiful. But even things like, and we love doing that, is in the winter season, which is now, to go for a picnic or to go to the desert in the evenings and have tea. And it sounds very mundane, but the starry night with no light pollution around you because
Yeah.
you're in the desert is unbelievable. It's like, I don't know, seeing the universe up close.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Oman. Oman has no high rises. And that means that on the one hand, it feels quaint. On the other,
Yeah.
it is very modern. And it's a very interesting mix. Oman is probably from an architectural perspective, this almost the opposite of Dubai.
Yeah.
There's no high rises.
Yes. Sorry. There's a 2-story limit or something, isn't there? Is there?
I
Is
don't
there
know quite what the limit is, but there's just no high rises.
Yeah.
However, from an architectural perspective, it looks stunning.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the blue door at the palace. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I don't know. I don't
Okay,
know.
well, there is this palace in Muscat, right? And you can walk there.
Yeah.
And it is just beautiful. Oman is a stunning destination for a weekend getaway or longer. And we have an office there, so I'm fortunate enough to also spend time in Oman
Yeah.
and work with our Omani colleagues. Yes.
Nice. Is that a permanent? So, in terms of office sizes, then is Dubai and Abu Dhabi relatively large offices? Saudi slightly smaller. I mean, how does the office breakdown work in the region?
Okay, so I think that's right when you say that Dubai is probably the largest.
Yeah.
And other offices might be a little bit more specialized, but even that is changing. Now, I
Yeah.
can't say too much about all of that.
Of course.
But for instance, right now, Abu Dhabi is just taken out we're just moving offices in Abu Dhabi
Yeah.
to, you've guessed it, a bigger office.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
Yeah.
Growing in the region then.
growing in the region. Yes.
Cool. So, as a kind of rounding off section, then, so let's turn back the clock to the early 2000s when you were training. What advice would you give to your trainee self then, back at the time in the Netherlands?
I've heard that question be asked so many times that I've never thought about what I would answer if I was asked it,
Right.
because I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah. So what do you think a trainee, not necessarily yourself, but what do you think a trainee would benefit from? What advice would a junior benefit from?
Be bold, to take ownership of your career. Try and articulate what it is that motivates you, and work hard and understand that it's such a privilege to be exposed to all these different things in life. It just makes you a better lawyer and more all round.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that work-life balance is overrated. It isn't. It is very important. But work is, in my world, it's been a defining sort of experience. I feel grateful for all the hard work that I was able to do, because I just felt that it allowed me to not just contribute, but also ripen and mature on the back of it, and to
Yeah.
have seen different things. So embrace the opportunity to work hard. And again, it sounds like I'm now telling people to not have that work-life balance, and that's not at all what I mean. But maybe I should say work hard, play hard. Maybe that's better. Not sure.
I don't know. I think maybe this is a dangerous topic to get into, but I don't think there's anything wrong with sacrificing things. I mean, for me personally, I work incredibly hard now so that I don't have to work as hard in the future. So I don't think there's anything wrong with encouraging people to work hard. I know there's a a push for well-being, work-life balance, and there is,
Yes, and we think that is extremely important,
yeah,
and I'm not going to detract from any of that.
and everyone's different as well. Everyone has different expectations from life.
I agree with that. I think in my case, it's been it allowed me to feel experiencing all these different things. Like I've been a regulator, I've been a lawyer,
Yeah,
and I've been involved in all these different transactions. I don't know, it just makes me feel like I'm a more rounded lawyer now than I was
yeah,
20 years ago. And it sounds silly, but I feel like I'll probably be a better lawyer 5 years from now than I am now. And it's probably on the back of all these different experiences.
yeah,
So I allowed them to shape me in the same way that I allowed Dubai to shape me and shape my career. So allow things to take you by the hand and let that shape you, but also articulate for yourself where and how you wish to grow and in what direction you wish to advance. And in my case, it was, if you remember, bank- en effectenrecht, or banking and securities
yeah. I'll have
legislation.
to write that down.
Yeah. I mean, nobody uses those words anymore, but it gave me a trajectory. It gave me a pathway.
Yeah,
And I just kept walking down that pathway. So I know that it is difficult, and I know that there is such a thing as fear of missing out. And if you sort of lock yourself into a certain career path, and you might forego other opportunities. Having said that, that's not been my experience.
yeah.
I've always focused on banking and securities. I keep saying these words. Fintech. Let's call it fintech.
No, you're gonna have to stick to bonk and whatever it's
Yeah,
called.
that one. Yes. But it paid dividends.
Yeah.
Um,
And did you, okay, fine. So let's say you're 22, 23 years old, working hard in bonk and Rechtsanwalt.
yeah.
Very close.
Yeah.
Was there a goal you were working towards? Because I think if you're just plugging away day after day and you have no idea what you're working towards in 5 years, maybe that can be difficult. But did you have a vision in your mind of a goal? Maybe it can be a really broad goal, but were you working towards something, or is it more just taking life as it happens?
I always looked at each client relationship and each mandate as something worth investing in it in each and every instance. Like
Yeah,
each client relationship is rewarding. Each mandate is rewarding. Each of them brings you more.
yeah,
So to me, it sounds silly, but the carrot on the stick was not early retirement, because if that was the case, I just mentioned I don't have a Porsche.
yeah,
Where's my Porsche?
yeah,
That doesn't mean that I suffered, not at all. But to me, the carrot on the stick was not the financial rewards. And of course, they can be considerable.
yeah,
I mean, I think anybody who has Google will realize what the profit share per partner is with the top leading law firms in the world.
yeah,
And DLA does pay the bills. Don't get me wrong. That's not the point. But the point is, to me, it's not been the carrot on the stick.
yeah,
The carrot on the stick has always been, I truly fundamentally enjoy being a lawyer and being good at what I
right,
do. And the last maybe 10, 15 years, I truly enjoyed sort of cultivating and nurturing that in others and allowing them to unlock potential. It's this unlocking. Look, I think there's genuine merit in growing into the best professional that you can be. I keep hammering that point. I also believe that mental health is very important, and I appreciate that the past, I think, 10 years in big law firms. I was at another law firm when we started having these discussions about the importance of mental health, and then you'd have a mental health champion from the partnership. And I think that was the first time, I think approximately 10 years ago, that within law firms,
yeah,
you saw that that became more important. And I think that is every bit as important. But I think the two come hand in hand. And I
yeah,
think in both cases, they result in the same thing, allowing you to be who you want and can be
yeah,
without, taking a toll on your own sort of self and good health.
yeah. But as I said, I think everybody has to find their own level about what their balance is, what they're happy to do.
Yeah.
But I think maybe it can be difficult on the junior end to see that end goal. But
Yes.
hearing genuinely, I think hearing other people like yourself talk about it and say, look, those early years are obviously tough, but you're working and building towards something. So yeah, I think it's good to share that. And as a final question, then, what are you looking forward to personal or professional, and this may get cut, but I remember you saying that you're looking forward to taking some time off to work as a car mechanic and repair cars. Don't tell the firm.
Don't tell the firm. So if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, Adrianus, listen, we found a way for you to, I don't know, escape for 2 years," what would I do? Look, I'm genuinely fond of the clients and the work I do with them.
Yeah,
So for me, it's going to be really difficult. I have to wean myself off of it. But I think I mentioned to you before we started recording that I do have a soft spot for mechanical things,
yeah,
and cars being one of them. And it might not be entirely of this day and age, but there is something deeply soothing about things that work like clockwork.
yeah,
So yes, absolutely. I'd love to have this sort of fantasy of, I don't know, having or being part of this workshop where maybe 1 or 2 cars are being restored. Now,
yeah,
I think not the only lawyer that is drooling over, not just vintage cars, but cars generally. I think I
yeah.
don't know what it is. There is this funny magazine in Holland. It used to be called something like Car and Lawyer,
Yeah.
and then you would
Really?
oh, absolutely. And then you'd see a lawyer like lean over his, restored classic, and it would typically be one of those cars that, wouldn't be very reliable, and
Yeah.
it wouldn't have to take him from A to B, and it would really
Yeah.
only be the weekend car. But it might be like a professional, like a legal professional issue
Yeah.
that we love cars too much.
Yeah. It's a very niche magazine, Cars and Lawyers.
Well, yes. Do you remember Horse and Hound from Love Actually?
Yeah, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, yeah, similar. Right. Well, look, thank you very much for your time. It's been great to have a chat with you today. And yeah, thanks very much for your time.
Likewise, thank you.